Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studio, joined now by officially a reoccurring guest. You know, it's a big deal that she's here. It's only during the majors. A tennis journalist, big name for herself. She hosts the 3 podcasts with Gil Gross and Joel Drucker. Amy Lundy's here. Amy, welcome back to Tennis Channel Inside In.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun talking with you, Mitch.
Yeah, I mentioned it being a big deal because we can kind of segue into it in a second, but it's a major. Your podcast focuses on the 3 greatest men's tennis players of all time. And I felt like at this French Open 2022, men and women, but I felt like this was a historic one. Like while it was happening, as we got to the finals, as stuff started to happen, there's debates over greatest and what run means the most and all that stuff. But didn't you get the sense too that we're going to be talking about this one for a long time? Like the events that happen on the men's and women's side, I feel like one way or another are going to be brought up down the road. Like 2022 French Open had some real historical ramifications.
Totally. You really hit it, because I really want people to appreciate what is happening right now, because 5 years from now, when Andre Rublev is playing Alcaraz for the final or whatever, and it's just major number 1 or 2 for these guys, we're going to be looking back on what has just happened and what is happening right now, and we're going to think, whoa, those were big days, huge tournaments with historical significance, and did we really appreciate it, or were we too caught up in the debating and the arguing? So I really want fans and viewers to appreciate what we've got right now.
Yeah, there's different generations of greatness happening. We're seeing it on the way up. We're seeing it definitely on the mantle. We're also seeing it kind of on the way down. A lot of different ways to start, but you start with the guy that's won it 14 times, Rafael Nadal, his 22nd major, beating 4 top 10 players to do it. One of his hardest paths to a title, and yet here he is, Amy, now 1-12-3 at the French Open. Goes through Felix in 5 sets, followed by the Djokovic match in 4. Zverev unfortunately gets hurt, and then he dispatches of Ruud in 3 straight sets. But Amy, I marvel at what he's done and what he's doing. But I think the biggest thing is ramping up after that 5-set match against Felix. That was the first of a bunch of tests. Little did we know that would be his hardest match in the entire tournament.
That was an intense match. I mean, I was sweating watching it, and I'm of the belief actually that Nadal had control of the match. Others will argue and say that no, Zverev was actually crushing the ball, and that Nadal actually stole that first set. But because of the way tennis is a sport of errors, and because of the way the errors were shaking out, and Zverev was making more errors, more unforced, I actually gave Nadal the slight edge, and might have expected him to go on to win the match, although would he have won in 5? Who knows?
I agree. And I kind of misspoke. Starting with, I guess, the Felix match was what I thought was his toughest match. But I think Zverev could have gotten there. It's funny because that's Zverev's semifinal. I know we're jumping ahead, but when you see a scoreline, like if you're not watching the match and you see big lead in the tiebreak and then Nadal wins, you assume, like we all would assume, that Zverev kind of blew it, like there was some choking involved. But those points were incredible. Like it wasn't, Zverev could have done things better. All athletes think you can improve when you lose or when you're on the other end of it. But I don't really think this was Zverev doing much other than maybe not raising his level to a level that we've never seen before on clay, and what Nadal was able to do in that first set.
That was a great point by you. I mean, think of the passing shot in the tiebreak to make it 6-4-6. That was not somebody, making a mistake or choking. That was just greatness personified. Mm-hmm. And he's done it before, Nadal, so I guess we shouldn't be so surprised when he's able to dig out of a hole like that. But at the same time, the shot making on the hurt foot after he's played a 5-set marathon against Felix at his age, it's just incredible what he's able to accomplish.
I have another question into this whole thing, and that's, how was he an underdog again? Like,
I know.
Can you imagine?
I know.
I'm trying to think of a comparison and I'm struggling with it, but in any other setting, in any other sport, individual or team, where there's just this domination. And I know there was an injury thing, but he showed up at the event. We saw the practice videos. He looked good. How is this guy, like, as he's breathing, as he's entered into a tournament, how is he not the favorite every single time? Like, it's crazy. And the way he handles that, by the way, with class just speaks to him, because, you know, a lot of other athletes would probably be a little irked if they've won this tournament so many times and they're not seen as they should be the prohibitive favorite.
I am irritated as heck with myself.
Yeah,
I picked Rafa to win the Australian Open when nobody else was picking him. I'm like, you can't pick against Nadal. You can't pick against Nadal. And yet in this column that I write, this guy like forces me to make players to watch, which are essentially picks. And I picked Djokovic. How could I pick against Nadal? I mean, what was I thinking, especially after I picked him to win the Australian Open? But he's, you know, unstoppable on this surface right now. And when he's on, he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows how to massage the surface and the points, and he knows how to play.
What were your thoughts of the Djokovic match in particular? I know it was not the same round, but a non-final matchup, just like the year before. The first set happens similar to last year. Nadal looks amazing, is the better player. Set 2 happens, and Nadal blows a double break lead, and you know, the odds markets, everything shifts to Djokovic looks like he's going to win this match. That's where the comparisons to last year end. Rafa flipped it, looks better in 3, comes back from a breakdown in 4. Your thoughts on that match? Nadal essentially taking it from Novak when Novak had the momentum after set 2, and that I think ultimately propelled Nadal to this French Open title.
I think you're right. I agree 100%. I think the Nadal fans get slightly miffed with me when I say that I didn't really think that Djokovic was totally himself in that match, from whether it be from a mental or a physical perspective. And there are some people that argued, Mitch, that he didn't get enough sets in because he was breezing so much through the tournament that maybe he wasn't as conditioned as Rafa was. But there was a point where Rafa made a very poor drop shot. And it was actually the first point of the game when Novak was trying to serve out the set. And Djokovic just turned away from the ball instead of running for it, the drop shot landed right around the service line. He could have easily gotten to it. And even Jim Courier noticed on the telecast, why didn't he run for that? That's really incredible, and just not like Novak Djokovic at all. So I don't know if he was affected by the reception that he got. You know, he was booed coming onto the court, which I thought was very disrespectful, or if he just, you know, some days you take the court and you're just not in your right frame of mind. You just don't have it mentally or physically. So I give Nadal all the credit in the world for winning that match, but at the same time, it wasn't typical Novak.
I agree with that. Just on a side note, and I love listening to Courier and Goodall call matches.
Yeah.
The point where they both kind of hit bad shots was great when Courier's like, it just proves that everyone's human. Like, I forget the timing of it, but it was just 2 bad shots in a row. It's like even the greatest ever can do that. I agree with what you said on Novak not having it. And I don't think it was sets in this tournament. As great as these guys are, Amy, you can't replicate match play. And Novak had been ramping up, but it's different when you're a well-conditioned machine playing tournaments weekly. He hasn't had that this year. And I think that's kind of been a difference for him. I really do. I think there is another level for him to get to with his game. We've seen it certainly, but he wasn't there. And I don't want to take any credit away from Rafa at all, but Novak has played better. Like, we have seen that on this surface, especially.
100%. And you make a great point about replication of match play, and not just physically, mentally. When you're playing a match, you get into a certain routine with the voices in your head and how you deal with the pressures. And when you're away from that for weeks and months, then it's like a muscle, and you're just not completely in tune. So that's a great point.
I have one other Rafa point that I wanted to bring up, and it kept coming up to me during that 4th set. He's down a break. Novak's up. He's up 2 sets to 1. Do you think that there's do you think that there's anything to the credence that most players, a lot of players smartly might say Novak's up with Rafa and all the miles and all the conditions, that they might have gone, okay, I just got to get to the 5th set and start fresh. Rafa is so not wired that way. He's going to compete till the wheels fall off. That in that 4th set down a break, Novak serving for the set to level it, he's still digging in, fighting as hard as ever. Do you think that from a competitive level, that might be what sets him apart from, we can go tennis players, we can go other athletes, but there really is no one like him?
Yeah, I mean, there are, and maybe in other sports like Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, but in this sport, you're right. And this year in particular, Mitch, and he's had an incredible year, Rafa has. I have seen him down a break in a set so many times that it doesn't even faze me anymore when I see that, because I'm like, well, he's only down 1 break, I'm sure he'll come back and either break back or get this thing in a tie break. And it happens time and time again. But in terms of, the player on the opposite end of that, when they get down a break, what are they thinking? What are their processes? I don't know. I have no idea. I would love to be a fly on the wall inside their brain.
The competition, the competitive level that he shows is really unprecedented, unmatched in this sport. He's one of the truly greats that we've seen in any athletic field. And just looking at it, I know we're never going to be able to slam the door on the greatest talk until they're all done playing, but he's got 22 Grand Slams now. I mean, his resume just keeps getting better. And as I said, he's going to be, as long as he plays, now the foot injury is an issue, but as long as he plays this tournament, he's going to be the favorite and he's going to be in the mix to keep adding to his incredible legacy. Though I do worry about the foot, saying he played the final when it was asleep, and him basically leveling. He's always been the most pragmatic, practical guy. He says, look, if this is going to be a long-term quality of life thing, he's comfortable walking away.
Oh, that would be so sad. I mean, but what a way to end it. The way that he's been talking though, Mitch, it's about solutions. Like, we don't have a solution right now, but we are going to try this. And then if this doesn't work, perhaps we try this solution. So it's apparently an incredibly rare disease, and more than one medical expert is going to weigh in on potential solutions. So all this is what I'm trying to say is, I don't think we're going to get a retirement announcement imminently. And the way that the rest of the year plays out is a real mystery.
Don't you just love the fact, though, that with him, it's always this innocence of, he just loves tennis. He loves the process. Like these comments coming out, like, I can't practice as hard. I can't play the lead up events. He could just play the French Open and practice on his own time, and we would still view him the same. But he just loves the process of being a pro tennis player because he loves the game.
Totally. There was a point in that Zverev match when the roof was closed and it was like a sauna in there. And I thought to myself, you love this?
Or Australia, where he's frying in what was it, the Manarino match? He's literally frying out there. It's like 110 degrees.
And Manarino is pushing him all over the court and just won't go away in some of those rallies. And I thought I would be, and I love tennis, but I would be miserable out there. But this is apparently what the guy loves. And in some of the pressure where just watching it on TV, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And yet this is what Rafael Nadal loves. He loves that moment of competition.
Amy Lundy here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Well, as the rest of the men's game goes, and trying to give credit and talk about different storylines to the people that didn't hoist the trophy, because only one can do that. We had some good developments on the men's side. We talked about Nadal and Djokovic, but I do want to give a shout out to Marin Cilic for making his run to the semifinals, which probably the most, I say, improbable this year. I don't know anybody that really had him making a deep run, given his injury history and what's gone on. But Cilic looked great, ran out of gas against Casper Ruud, but props to Marin Cilic for putting it together and proving that he can maybe have a second wind, making a semifinal at the French Open.
He's an all-surface player. He has an incredible forehand. He has a great serve that serves him well on any surface, and it's fantastic to see him back again. You know, what happened in between the last time Marin Cilic was really good and now that he's getting really good again is that he had a child, he had some life changes and stuff like that. And I think basically what's happened is he's just getting his tennis feet back and he's getting his confidence back.
Yeah, it's been great to see. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame discussion, has a major, was one match away from a final in all 4 majors. So he's definitely in the mix. Even though Casper Ruud lost the final, kind of going away to Nadal, I don't want to take away from what that accomplishment means. This kid from Norway who at 23 years old, 23, 24 years old, is into a major, a French Open final. Some will say that he's, getting the most out of it and the draw opened up, but Amy, he still made a final at a French Open. And it's just a tremendous accomplishment for somebody who's put the time in and had to steadily rise up the rankings as opposed to just, lightning fast like Alcaraz or other names.
Ruud is not a flash in the pan. He made the finals of Miami on a different surface. I think, though, Mitch, he's going to have to figure out what to do about the backhand and how he's going to attack that wing going forward. And he's already just recently announced within the last 24 hours, I think, that he's not going to play any grass warm-ups. He's going to go right into Wimbledon. So, it's makes sense. He's probably exhausted. Mm-hmm. But he's a consistent player. He's got a great mentality. And I think the trajectory for him is up, especially if he can figure out what to do about the backhand.
Agree with that. And I also think, I was a big fan of the Scandinavian matchup, maybe not the ending of it, but yeah. It was good to see. And there's, we can also talk about another player in this draw that I think has made strides, and that is Felix Auger-Aliassime, who pushed Nadal to 5 sets, the only guy to do that. I think we're starting to see more consistency with Felix. He's still super young. I have to keep reminding everybody that with younger players coming up, but it is a process, and he's quietly putting together some great major runs. This is U.S. Open, quarterfinals, followed by a semi where he had match points up 2 sets against Medvedev, and now a great performance against Rafa. Felix is throwing his hat in the race too as being one of the premier next gen guys to actually get deep into tournaments and push the best in the game.
Felix is so on the cusp. He is right there. Remember, Felix beat Roger Federer on grass a year ago, I think. So he's shown that he can hang with the greats. He gave Nadal the hardest time of anyone in this tournament, including Djokovic. So he is so close. I think at this point, Mitch, it's got to be just about confidence and getting over that final hurdle.
Yeah, in sets, I think, what was it, 2 and 4 against Rafa, he looked very good. It's something to play a guy that great, that tough. Is there anybody else on the men's side that you want to bring up for better or for worse, what you saw in this French Open?
Well, not what I saw in the French Open, but I wanted to bring up Berrettini, who everybody's forgotten a little bit about. He played this week, yesterday or today, and beat Albut, and he beat him in 3 sets, which was fine. He hasn't had match play in forever, but Berrettini said that his hand that he'd had minor surgery on felt really good, like 0 pain. Remember, Berrettini made the finals of Wimbledon. So grass is a really good surface for him, especially given his serve. He's one to watch.
We're going into a grass court season where it doesn't look like there's going to be Nadal. There's players that haven't really played or have match play. Novak is a favorite. Russian players can't play. Point being that Berrettini is one to watch because he is one of the few that has a very great resume on this surface, making the final last year. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about the women's game, Amy. And we just keep doing it. I feel like every week on this show, we go, all right, women's tennis, and it's Iga Swiatek because she won her 2nd French Open title, 21 years old, and has 35 straight wins, tied with Venus for the most in the 21st century on the WTA. And it was annihilation. All due respect to Coco Gauff, she got the same result that everybody else has been getting, and that's an easy breezy Iga win. She's incredible to watch. Kamal Murray pointed out how fast she plays. she's so locked into the moment, but she is flying through these opponents, both literally and figuratively.
That's a great point by Murray. And if I'm trying to knock her off, that may be something that I look at. How do I disrupt her rhythm a little bit? I think, I mean, I'm going to go a little bit against conventional wisdom, and I think she is going to be vulnerable on grass. In her favor, she's a fantastic mover, which you need on grass, just as you do on clay. But I think the forehand, which is her major weapon, is the timing of it is actually perfect for clay. So I want to see how she adjusts to the grass. And
Right.
also her serve, which is not her biggest weapon. And everybody with a big serve benefits from playing on grass.
I think with Iga, you bring up good points. Do want to also point out, though, for full transparency, as many people listening know, junior Wimbledon champion. So
that's right. That's right.
But bring up good points in the sense that, she's somebody else that like grass. Like Tracy Austin told me once that it all comes together at once because there's just so little reps on the surface. It's a 3-week season. The thing with Iga that you bring up, the serve not being a weapon, actually frightens me. It would frighten me if I was coaching or one of these WTA players, because she's doing all this without getting a lot of free points on the serve. My biggest takeaway from Iga, and you bring up great points on her game and it being perfect for clay, but when you win this many matches in a row, it's the mental challenge of not just who you're beating, but just getting up out of bed every morning, going to the court and approaching it with kind of putting the expectation to the back of your mind. She's been able to win a tournament, go into the next tournament, start from zero, where that tournament doesn't mean anything in the event that you're in, and been able to handle expectations as good as any young player that I've seen, man or woman, in a very long time.
That is a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but I know with tennis players, as with other aspects of life, some people have a personality where they're really good front runners. They're good, and they get better and better and better and build more and more and more confidence as their results improve and their track record improves. Then there's others that sort of panic in that situation, like, oh my God, I did all this, now I've got to keep it up. I'll never keep it up. I feel like I'm on a treadmill. Well, Iga seems to be the opposite of that. So that would definitely be a point in her favor.
She's going to, I mean, not breaking news, but there will be losses. There'll be a dip in her game. There will be points where she's not at her best and somebody will get her. How she responds to that is something to watch, but it's just been impressive to see how mature she's been in these moments. And she is, as we've said, she's an unreal athlete. I think that's part of the low key thing, and the way she plays has just been very good to see. We'll see. I mean, who do you think can be someone to challenge her in grass court season, into the U.S. North American summer hard court swing? Because that's the other side of this, right, Amy? That a contender hasn't really emerged. So who can be? I will probably have to take it surface by surface, but who do you think can be one to challenge Iga for some of these tournaments?
Normally, I would not say Goff because of the big windup on the forehand and how on grass the forehand and the ground strokes really need to be abbreviated. But Coco Gauff plays well at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
So I think if she's not too crushed by what happened in the final, and she doesn't seem to have that kind of personality, I think she would be a contender. And with the serve, I like the big servers like Sabalenka on grass at Wimbledon. So you're right. Like, what goes up must come down. She will lose eventually. She's a human being. I think one of the more fascinating storylines throughout tennis is how is Iga going to play at Wimbledon?
It certainly is. And as far as Coco goes, obviously I'm a big fan. Very athletic, hard to finish points against her. But the forehand is an issue that she's going to have to work on against these top players. You saw it in the match against Iga where she was targeting it. She was giving her opportunities to hit winners on her forehand, and it wasn't meant to be. And the higher you go up in the tennis game, these players are so smart, cerebral. Their coaches are working on game plans. That's one for Coco to approach. It's look, the opportunity is there for the taking, right? Like, there is a opening for a top 10 player to get up and challenge Iga Swiatek. It's just about who's going to put together great results. And I am very intrigued. I will put it that way. But there is a clear number one at the top of the women's game, and it is as clear as day and as clear as it's been in a long time. This run does harken back to, I know there's a long way to get to those resumes, but this feels like a Williams sister run in the sense that we all know who the top dog is.
Yeah, it's just so tragic. Maybe that's
I
too
know what you're
strong of
going
a
to say.
word.
Yeah.
That Barty
Yeah.
retired. I mean, what this is something that women's tennis has needed and begged for, a
Mhm.
rivalry. And Barty has such a good serve, her height notwithstanding, that this would have been such a cool sort of dovetail matchup in terms of one player's strengths to another player's strengths. But that's okay. Barty's going to be playing golf in my area over in New Jersey next month in a cool kind of golf exhibition. So maybe I'll wander over there and see what she's up to.
I would. I think, I mean, she's picking up another sport that she's good at. I think that's bragging a little too much, but no, I think that, you know, it would have been good to see. Barty had beaten her a few times. Iga hadn't found that groove yet, but that would have been a great rivalry. And, you know, there's certain matches that all bring it together. This is the last thing I'll say on Iga. I've gone on record on this show. It was in Doha, I think the first tournament that she won. She beat Sakari for the first time in her career. I felt like that was the match where it was like I got through an opponent I couldn't beat, and then she just hit the ground running. So we'll see. 35 and counting. It could be a while before she loses, but the women's tour has the depth to create new contenders and new up and coming players. We'll see who sticks together. But as far as the women's side on Roland Garros, anybody else that stood out to you in this tournament for doing well, overseeding expectations, or anything of that nature, Amy?
You know who I really like is that Jill Teichman.
Yeah.
She's got some scrap and some some inability to back down in some of the tougher rallies. I almost picked her to go to the final four of this tournament. I think she's a player to watch. I'm very interested in her game.
She beat Naomi Osaka last year at the Western and Southern in Cincinnati, and I thought that was a very good performance. Showed that she was battle tested, not afraid at the moment. I'll give a shout out to, and I know she was banged up at the end, but Leylah Fernandez bouncing back, winning some tough matchups. I know she was feeling it by the end of that tournament, but it was a good performance. And then Sloane Stephens making another run in France, getting to the quarterfinal round, I think was good for her too. So we'll see. This is a deep talent pool. And before I forget, Jessie Pegula, top 10,
Oh
first
yeah,
time in her career, top ranked American. So want to show some love there as well.
absolutely. I actually didn't expect her to have such a great run after losing to Jabeur, but she did. She's just rock solid. I would love to see her continue to improve, and especially on the other surfaces.
This isn't a flash in the pan for her either, because it's 2 solid years, 2.5, 3 solid years of getting better, of playing and beating the best. I think Pliskova still has nightmares seeing her in a draw, but
Yeah.
she's just been working her way up. Amy Lundy here on Tennis Channel Insight In. Well, we kind of get to the grass court season. One of the players we did want to talk about was Emma Raducanu. Unfortunately, another injury in her first grass court match, really. She goes out with another injury. She's had some coaching changes. There's a lot made about the success and what comes with being a major champion at such a young age and being a British tennis player in that storied country as well. But it's unfortunate what's been happening in recent memory with Emma. She just gets some momentum, but then can't really sustain it. How do you break down what Emma Raducanu is going through, and what do you see for her in the near future as we keep going in the 2022 season?
Mitch, so much has been written about Emma Raducanu and why she's struggling right now. And a lot is being said about her endorsements and her off the court. So I've been really interested in just her tennis.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on in terms of the X's and O's and the numbers? And I got my hands on a huge data set involving what she did in that historic US Open run and what her percentages were in all sorts of categories: serve, return, 0 to 4, all that. And then I have started to compare it to what she's done since. And one thing it's early days in my little analysis, but one thing that's kind of bubbled up is actually her first serve percentage. She's putting a very, very high percentage of first serve in. Well, you think, well, that's not a bad thing, you know, to get a lot of your first serve in. But if you think of the great servers on the men's tour, like Isner and Medvedev, these guys have a sweet spot of percentage of first serve in, which is the mid 60s. Even Medvedev, I think, is 62, and he's phenomenal server. Because if you're putting too much of your first serve in, you're probably not going for enough. And then if you look at Raducanu's first serve percentage of points won, it's a little too low. And it's lower than what she did at the US Open. So I'm just going to give you one example. Her round of 64 match at the Miami Open, she put 80% of first serves in, and she only won 57% of those. So that's not the dichotomy that you want. So I think it would really be great for Raducanu to just look at the service in general, because her speeds are not off. There's nothing wrong with her speed. Her motion, I mean, I'm not a technical guru, but her motion seems good to me. And you know, just look at the approach to the service in general, first and second serve, and see, is this what we want?
Right. No, that's an interesting point, and one that I think a lot of tennis fans don't think about, is that you might not be going for enough. You might not be hitting certain targets. And first things first, want her to get healthy, want her to stay out there, and pushing off the side, the off court stuff. And that's for another time, another day. But do you think, I mean, I know what I think, but do you think it might benefit her to have a long time relationship with the coach, as opposed to all these changes that seem to be happening with her and her team, how she keeps shuffling through coaches?
Absolutely, 100%. And I've been talking to some people on tour when I was in Paris, and pretty much the entire tennis world says the same thing. She really needs a consistent full-time coach that can help her navigate some of just the tennis stuff, whether it be a technical issue or an approach to the game. I mean, I think, as you quoted Tracy Austin earlier as we were talking, a great player once said to me that the aim of tennis is to work easier, not harder. In other words, get the easy power so that you're not grinding yourself to a pulp.
Right.
And a little bit of that may be going on. She may be thinking, I don't need a coach if I just work harder, if I just practice harder. She made a comment about getting a good practice partner, a sparring partner, and not really needing a coach. That's not really the answer, especially at her age. So I definitely think a good, solid, long-term coach would benefit her.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old adage, right? Work smarter, not harder. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that will come with age, but I think consistency is good. I know coaching partnerships don't last forever. We saw it with Kontaveit and Turzinov breaking up, but you need a consistent voice for a sustained run. And I think it would benefit her to have that, because the game's still there. And I think there's still a lot of career left. So we'll see what happens. Another British tennis player that's back is Andy Murray on grass court. He's still going strong. It's great to see him. I know it's somebody that's still chasing that perfection at his age with the miles on there. I never got your opinion though, Amy, on the great tennis wildcard debate of 2022 that seems to be happening. What your thoughts are on, you know, he made noise at Madrid by getting a wild card, and some Spanish players took offense to that. But do you have a strong preference one way or another on this wild card debate?
I'm so glad you asked. I definitely have a preference on this, and that is that Andy Murray deserves wild cards. He is a Grand Slam champion. He is a fabulous ambassador for the sport. He engages with fans on Twitter. He practices. He sells tickets. He's a draw. He's a TV ratings draw. If Andy Murray wants to play any tournament on the planet, I personally would give him a wild card in a hot second.
Yeah, two things for me. tennis tournaments are events. They're run by organizers. They can do whatever they want to draw and sell tickets. And number two, nobody actually deserves a wild card. Like it's if you're in that range, you know, you could always get your ranking up and not have to deal with it. I know it's a sore subject. I've heard tennis players actually say that point blank. So I agree. I mean, it's good to, you know, it's good to see him out there. I know he loves grass. I know every time he plays Wimbledon for the rest of his career, he's going to get that hero's welcome, not just because he's the two-time champion, Amy, but because he's one of them. He's one of the British people, and this is their hero in a lot of ways.
Totally. That's what wild cards are, Mitch. They're wild. I mean, if it were to be determined by record or ranking, or you're the next highest ranked player on the list, then it wouldn't be called a wild card. And I agree with you 100%. And actually, I have a friend whose daughter that is sort of a local girl. She played at Duke, and she got a wild card to a WTA tournament based on relationships. And she lost the match pretty bad. But the experience of it was life-changing. And she will always be able to say that she played in a WTA match. And she got the wild card based on just everything that she had meant to that local community. So I think that the wild card system is one of the few things in tennis that is fine. Don't touch it. It's good. Sometimes it goes to somebody who gets it based on rankings. Sometimes it doesn't. That's fine. It's wild.
There we go. See, we need more, and I'm guilty of it too. We need more positivity with things we like about tennis instead of just always complaining about all the stuff we don't. Before we go, Wimbledon coming up. I do also want to quickly mention, I don't know if it's going to set doubles tennis back if Kyrgios and Bublik do well, but that's a team that I don't know what to expect.
Well, it's going to get me to watch doubles. And you know, it's funny, I am more of a doubles player, but I really enjoy the mano-a-mano singles competition. But there are some doubles situations out there, particularly at Wimbledon. Those can be fun. And that one I will watch 100%.
Yeah, we haven't gotten word, right? Naomi Osaka says she's playing mixed doubles, but she's keeping it close to the vest. Is that right? Like, I think I remember.
A lot of them are. And there's some talk too about Raducanu potentially partnering with Andy Murray. I think a lot of these people play it close to the vest until just before the tournament for whatever reason.
Andy's like the dream part. Like, everybody would want to play with him for a variety of reasons, but you know, he's number one on the pecking order. He can play with anybody he wants in mixed.
Remember when he played with Serena at Wimbledon? So entertaining. And after the match, you know, it was when he was just coming back from his injury. And after the match, he said that Serena carried him. And you know what? She did.
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely the more accomplished doubles player there for sure. Amy, this has been a pleasure. We're getting ready for Wimbledon. So I just wanted to end on this. You know, unfortunately, not going to be a full field with players not allowed to play. Ranking points are not going to be a part of it. It's going to be a different Wimbledon for sure. We're not going to have Federer, Serena. They won't have rankings after Wimbledon, which is kind of insane. And guys like Novak Djokovic could win the tournament and he'll be down to, I think, 7 in the ranking afterwards. So we're gearing up for a different, definitely an unconventional Wimbledon. It's still going to have the same prestige and the meaning to the players that play it. But I think we should brace ourselves for this just being a different type of Wimbledon.
Yeah, you know, and I actually earlier I mentioned Sabalenka, and I just realized she's Belarusian. She's not going to be able to play. I think I've been in denial, and I haven't really been thinking about it because I've been so consumed with the French Open. I'm really bummed out about it, even though I have to say that I understand the actions of the country and of the All England Club. I just haven't really given it that much thought, but I do know that Wimbledon is Wimbledon, and there's no, even though there's not going to be points awarded, there is no bloom off the onion, so to speak. It's still a very prestigious event. It still means the world to people, and there's still prize money, Mitch. And the last I checked, these players need money.
That's true. That's true. And, you know, there's the historical ramifications. All the majors will count the same for whoever wins it. It's going to be wild to see. And it's fascinating that a guy like Novak could win and then see his points from the last year drop off. I guess I want to end with this. I mean, do you think there is a timetable for when we're going to see Roger Federer on the tennis court again?
It's so funny you asked that, because I just checked. I scoured everything, the internet. I ran some things past a couple people before I came on here because I wanted to have the very latest. He's been quiet, and he didn't even do his typical customary tweeting at Nadal, although Nadal says that Federer sent him a private message congratulating him on winning Roland Garros. But all signs point to that Laver Cup. And so I'm hoping that Roger will post some videos going forward in the next couple of months so that we can see what the forehand looks like, what the serve looks like, what the backhand looks like. But he hasn't said he's not going to play the Laver Cup, so that seems to be where he's pointing.
Well, we know that any Federer we get at this point is just like a gift. It's like a blessing to see however much tennis he has left. And I think we would agree that he fits in that Andy Murray category of deserving all the wild cards he gets.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just some players that they don't have to worry about it.
Was it Rotterdam a couple years ago, obviously, when he was chasing the #1 ranking? He announced last minute and they sold out within like an hour. It was something comical like that.
And after he retires, even his exhibitions are going to be that way. So who doesn't want to watch the guy play?
I feel the same way. Amy Lundy, appreciate you joining Tennis Channel Inside In. We'll have to keep a lookout. You guys are doing great work. You, Gil Gross, Jill Jucker on 3. And still going strong. There was worries, a little bit ago, how much more tennis is there going to be for the content of this show 3, but they've won another major. So let's just keep adding to the show, and really a fun listen. I appreciate your work as always.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk to you as always.